3, 4.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm chatting with someone who folks here in the west of Ireland might not know off the top of their heads, but in the US, he's been a big name in journalism for years, Terry Moran. Terry spent decades with ABC News covering conflict zones, the White House, the Supreme Court, and all the major political stories over the past few decades. But recently, he made headlines himself. He did a pretty tough, no-nonsense interview with Donald Trump not long ago. One of the few journalists who's really put Trump on the spot. And then a few weeks after that interview, he posted a tweet calling Trump and the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller, world-class haters. That tweet ended up costing him his job at ABC. So in this conversation, we'd like to get into that. The Trump interview, the tweet, and what it's like being a journalist in a time when telling the truth can get you fired. I'm Dahi. This is Philosopheckery. How you doing, Terry?
I'm good, Dahi. That was a kind introduction. Thank you.
That's no problem. It's hard to overstate your career there in media. But how has it been since you've left media? You're on Substack now?
Yeah, that's my home now. And it's been both kind of daunting. It was a shock for sure to get fired after 28 years for what I thought was an accurate description of what I could see in front of me and what was happening in front of me. I mean, it's a little hot, I suppose. They thought very hot too, so hot that I should lose my job there. So that was a shock for sure. But in addition to kind of all the usual emotions that come with job loss, you spiral 2 a.m. and all that stuff. What are we going to do? I find it exhilarating because that was one of the established TV networks in America for 50 years. And I was there for 27, 28 of them. And I feel like I walked out of yesterday and into tomorrow. I feel like I walked out of a cave almost where everything looked the same kind of great. And now, well, this kind of media is obviously where we're all headed. And it's more interesting as a journalist, right? You liberate your voice. I don't work for a corporation. I work for myself. But also it's cooperative and you're connecting with people. People give me tips on good stories. People give me help and sources and such like that. And, you can feel that. And I'm having a good time, actually.
Good. And do you feel like you said there are people give you tips on stories and this? Was that not happening when you were with a corporation? Do you feel like people maybe trust you more now that you're an individual person?
That's a great point. I'll bet that's true. Look, there was a tip line that every news organization I ever worked with. People would pick up the phone, I've got a tip for you, or send something via email. Not so much, though, and not in recent years. It's interesting that you would say that because I would hear from people about, hey, look into this or that. More, maybe it was the subject I was covering. I was covering the White House during the George W. Bush, end of Clinton's first several years of Bush. And that happened a lot more back then. That's a long time ago. And I think that kind of did dry up a bit. I do think it really did. And I wonder if I think that might be the case. People felt while we came together in these social media spaces, that made us feel farther and farther apart from the traditional media, especially as it did kind of bland out, if you will. I mean, when I joined ABC News, there was a lot more voice in the storytelling, a lot more information in some ways as well. And the stories were longer. And I think one of the things that happened is the corporation started losing money because that model has been struggling for a long time. And they decided that the best way to appeal to the people who were left, kind of, and there's still millions, don't get me wrong, was to, I don't want to say lowest common denominator, let's just say common denominator. And that ended up being, I think, less interesting place to work. And I think our audience took it more as a commodity than as something valuable to them. Oh yeah, that's the evening news. They all do the exact same stories. in the exact same order, in the exact same way, with the exact same pictures. And I think the distinctiveness of ABC News, I loved my career there. Actually, I'm not one of those guys who's really bitter about everything. I respect the people and the work they do there, but they kind of became same. I think by the force of corporate pressure because the bottom line was falling out. And then in Trump, it is such a fraught time in America that I think they want nothing to do with anybody kind of putting their head above above the wall and challenging them or saying something that might tick them off. And that's how I ended my career there.
Yeah, it's interesting. David Wright is another guy who
Sure,
got
I know
let.
David. No more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he got let go from ABC because he was videotaped covertly by that Project Veritas guys. Um, Now, it was highly chopped and cut, so it was what they put up. But he said something along the lines of the commercial imperative was more important than the news. And that's kind of a little bit of what I'm getting there from you as well. And do you think that is what happened, that the commercial imperative, is that why people stopped trusting the media? As you said, it became a product. It became a product to sell rather than the gift of knowledge and telling people what's going on, you know?
Yeah, I think
Uh,
you're right about that. The storytelling, whether it was a hard news story, this is something the government has done, this is a storm that's happened, or whatever, or whether it was a deeper investigative piece or a feature piece, I think it flattened out quite a bit. And there's no question that the business model has been really bad for them for a while. First, cable took a big chunk out of them. And then, as people fled into social media and alternative sources of news, they were left trying to hang on, are left. And once again, it still gets millions of people to watch, but struggling. And I think their answer was, you know, don't offend anybody, don't challenge anybody. And that ended up being unsatisfying,
mm,
as a reporter,
mm,
and unsuccessful at the end of the day. I mean, what one instantly finds out. I'm on Substack. It's called Real Patriotism with Terry Moran because I got sick of the other side kind of hijacking all that stuff. But I may keep that, I may not. It's at Terry Moran on Substack. But for me, it was very disturbing that you couldn't really tell the stories with the values necessarily. You could do it with emotions. What that model of journalism is very good at are pictures and emotions. The ideal story for it is a fire or a hurricane or whatever. They'll give useful information. They'll get you to the most needy places. They'll help actually get funds flowing to those places. Call out the government if they aren't working right on the hurricane or whatever. But then what's happening in our country now is the biggest story of my lifetime. We have a regime, we have an administration that is forcefully trying to change fundamentally the nature of our government. It's one of the reasons I'm happy to be out of the mainstream corporate legacy media, because this is a moment when you discover who you are as a citizen in the United States. And I was feeling somewhat constrained. I did not intend to get fired when I posted that. Uh, what I
that's a
intended
question.
to do,
That's something I'd like to get to the bottom of, if I can, Terry. Is about, did you think there'd be consequences when you posted that? Like, I've heard you talk about the day, and you went for a walk with the dog. You had a family day. You watched Ocean's 11, and but this was in your head all day. Um, did you know? Did you think, okay, hitting this post button, I think I might be fired for this?
no,
No,
never in a
not
million
at
years.
all.
No.
Really?
But I didn't, because I really, before I hit it, I looked at it, I reread it, and I thought, well, that's a description. That's something you might write if you were describing the public man that Stephen Miller, the
Mm,
White House chief of staff, the counselor, main counselor for Trump, and Trump himself. You would describe them with words that are vivid and intense, right? He's a world class hater, but
mm.
palpably true.
But
And
it
I,
is it is kind of a different language
yeah,
that you used. It's a more like, I know that you are. I don't know if you call someone a fan of law. and you read legal papers, and you were going to go to law school at one stage
Of
before
course.
I think it was Ireland that changed your mind listening to you, but I don't know.
It-
But that legal and the media that you're working in, it uses a certain type of language. It uses a language that's verifiable, that you can back up later. Whereas the descriptive, almost poetic language that you used in that tweet, it was a little bit different. Do you think that there's something that's happening right now that can't be described in that legalistic language that
yeah.
needs poetry?
Yeah, yes. And I wouldn't have described it that way, Di, that that's what I was doing. But I kind of felt that we weren't meeting the moment, that I wasn't meeting the moment, that we have these conventions of language, of, one side, the other side, fact checking. They actually do pretty well. But of course, it's impossible because the Trump administration is a fire hose of falsehoods at the country every day. But they do that pretty well. But the truth isn't just the facts, right? It's like what they mean. And we're all feeling that. Either, hey, yes, smash the opposition, round up those people. The more cruelty, the better. They'll learn a lesson. Silence those people I don't like. Or, my God, what's happening to our country? This is a moment of crisis. And our coverage did not at ABC. And once again, love most of my colleagues there. They do very good work, but it couldn't capture the moment. That's exactly what you were saying. And was I conscious that I was frustrated? Was that the straw that broke the camel's back, that I kind of I gotta say this? I don't know. All I know is that I think Stephen Miller is a malignant force in our country. And he's out there every day. And I felt it was right to call him out on it in those words. Did I think I might get in trouble? Well, a couple of things. First, the X algorithm had long ago kind of smashed me down a little bit. No matter what I put out, like literally, it would get like nobody would see it. But I know how social media works, so I figured this get a little traction. And then I thought, I actually didn't think. I was quite surprised when they called up the next day and they said, "You got to take it down." I said, "All right, I'll take it down." And then they said, and you're suspended. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess that really ticked them off. I still didn't expect you're done, you know. Um, but I actually don't. They do it. It's their policies. It's their business. They want to proceed like that. That's fine. I think it's a dying business, unfortunately, and I'm not glad about that. But I've got what I love to call my inappropriately young children at my age. And so I've got work to do ahead of me. And this was going to be an issue at some point anyway, that ABC was going to either having less and less impact in the world, me having less and less of a role at ABC. I was thinking, well, what else? In other words, this was the best time I could have chosen to get fired in the best possible way. So
Yeah.
it's worked out.
Did did it ever cross your mind? Were you ever looking at Substack when you were still with ABC, going, you know what? I'd love to have the freedom of Substack there.
A little bit, but not Substack to me before I joined it and found really a community and even a business model that's going to work for me and that I'm enjoying. Um, it was more a place that I did research. There's really smart people out there in law, I covered the Vatican covered the Vatican for ABC for a long time. Not there, but they would always send me over for big consistories or when they made saints and such like that, and covered the Pope. I met 4 popes somehow. Um, and so reading in that way was very valuable to me. I didn't think this was my home, but I did think, and you mentioned the Trump interview, that happened at the end of April. And afterwards, it got a bit of buzz, right? It was good back and forth, and I thought, maybe I could do what you're doing, right? Like maybe I could do this independent journalism and in podcasting, whatever. You have your YouTubing, whatever. So I called up a guy named Scott Galloway. Have you heard about this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very prominent
Yeah.
podcaster and commentator in America. My wife had worked for him years ago, and so I said, so just did this interview with the president. Things are kind of cooking for me a little bit. What do you think about me heading out there? He said, I'm going to say to you first off that over the last 6 months, I've heard from 12, he said a dozen or so of people who do exactly what you do, including 4 of your colleagues at ABC. All of them, you would know their names. They're iconic in your business. They're all asking me the same question. Everybody wants to jump ship. He said, my advice to you is that you get a big paycheck from ABC. Hang on to that as long as you can and prepare your next act on the side. So when I got fired like 3 days later, and I said to him, I said, well, I guess I didn't take your excellent advice.
I think subconsciously maybe you did.
I had friends who said you did this on purpose, right? I did not do this on purpose. And believe me, this is not the way to do a career change or anything like that. But you make lemonade out of your lemons.
Of course. The Trump interview. How long before the interview did you find out you'd be doing it?
About 3 days. I heard it on Friday afternoon and went Tuesday morning. So yeah, it's about 3 days. And I was in Rome covering the funeral of Pope Francis. So I had to finish that. That happened. I heard on Friday. The funeral was on Saturday. I flew back on Sunday and got back, started working on Sunday night, worked Monday, and then sat down in the Oval Office with him. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah. You've interviewed many public figures, presidents, etc. What was the lead up to the Trump interview? What was the conversation with your own interlocutor, and how might that have been different before you interviewed, say, Obama?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I would say Trump is a tough interview, right? I interviewed Obama 8, 10 times probably over the course of his campaigns and presidency. Obama was a great interview, especially early on, because unlike most American politicians, he actually tried to answer your question. He didn't have some canned answer at the ready for every question. He's a thoughtful man. A canny politician. I'm not saying he was like you and me talking, but he tried to answer your question. And you could feel the mind at work and the values at work and all that. Trump is a fire hose of falsehoods, right? Of lies. And he's a brutish man. And so preparing for Obama was, what are the most important topics? How do we get him to move beyond where he's been, challenge him on things that he's kind of weak on, all that stuff. With Trump is how do we corral him? What is it that we want to do? And there were 2 or 3 of us. It was a couple of the most joyful days I had at ABC because I was very nervous. I was like, I got a couple of days. I hadn't done a presidential interview in a while, and I had never interviewed Trump. And they were only doing it because some of my colleagues were disqualified because Trump was suing them. Some, I was kind of low man on the totem pole there. They said, Terry, can you do it? I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. But I just kind of paced around the conference room we were in, and there were literally 2, 3, 4 of us. And just my priorities, don't fight with him. 2, don't ask the questions that Washington wants asked, that my colleagues in the press think are the right questions. Think of my 9 brothers and sisters and the others like them around the country. What's the right question for them? And execute on the plan and try to get him to answer. Once again, trying to take me out of the equation. Don't fight with him. Treat him respectfully. He's the president of the United States. And at some point, other people started coming in the room, started firing questions at me. The night before, my head was just spaghetti. I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this. And I woke up the next morning before I even stirred. I was like, it's there. It's okay. And the rest of the day was a blast. Good preparation, good plan. And I had a great time doing it. He didn't, but I did.
Yeah, no, it did. It looked like you were enjoying yourself, to be honest. It did. And as you said, it didn't look like he was enjoying himself. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much. I'm not sure. But you didn't let him away with anything. And being that the company you were working for was being sued by him, was there any influences on you? Look, don't push him here. Don't say this. Was there any influences at all that were on you saying, be wary, please don't get us another lawsuit?
I might have proposed a question or 2 that people said, no, you can't ask. And I think it happened. I can't remember what it was, Dahi, because I think we were talking and I said to them, well, let's ask him about this. I wish I could remember what it was. And they were like, no. And it wasn't the management, although at some point management did come in. It was the agreed upon realization that question, I wish, would just get us down a road that we didn't want to get. You know, a lot of that is just distraction. He throws a
Yeah.
lot of accusations and sues people all the time just to get the focus off of what he doesn't want to talk about. But no, I didn't feel any kind of interference. As I said, it was really intense, short prep that was a blast because it was rich with possibility. And we had to hone it in a way. He gave us 30 minutes. We ended up taking about 35 and make it happen. So I did not feel that. I did not feel that. Maybe I was self-censoring, but I don't think I really wanted. I'm not quite sure what I would have asked. That
What would you ask if you could interview him now on the Substack that you wouldn't have asked then?
well, I didn't. I wasn't that into the Epstein stuff, I must say. But at this point, it's a catalog of evidence that he was part of that.
Yeah.
I now know a name I didn't know at the time, Katie. No, I don't. Katie Porter, I believe she was 14 at the time. Claimed that he was, assaulted her, and has since committed suicide. So,
Oh, there's a couple of
well,
them ladies that have committed suicide now.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to confront him with that, because one thing I did learn about him, he wants to rattle you, he wants to bark at you, and he wants to get after you and make you back down or get into a fight, which he's going to win because he's got no boundaries on any of that. Sorry about that. He's got. I wanted to. I saw him over those 35 minutes, 45 minutes with the walkabout or whatever it was. And I actually kind of thought this guy's not all that tough. He's loud and he'll tear you apart rhetorically and if he has power that he can use against you, he'll use it. But on a man-to-man level, and look, that moment he got shot and he rose up and all that, that is an astonishing piece of self-control and self-imagination and all that stuff. But I don't think I wasn't afraid of him. I think a lot of people get nervous around him.
Mm. He's not a scary guy up close. He's not I recently done a podcast with a psychologist, philosopher who's written books on the path to mass evil and things like that, using Hannah Arendt and the Second World War. And I was wondering if you felt evil from Trump, because what's coming out of the White House now, what the likes of Stephen Miller are doing, some of the policies, I think they certainly can be described as evil, some of them. But was there an evil vibe there, basically?
That's a really good question. I agree with you. I think some of the things we're seeing, the cruelty is the point with this administration, and he enjoys it. And I think he's dark. I think he's dark. There's something rotten in him, right through.
Yeah.
He'll lie at any moment. He'll do anything he takes. He enjoys being a bully if he can bully. He not necessarily because I'm any brave guy. I just was executing on my plan, having a good time. I wasn't letting him get to me at all, and he didn't know what to do with it. Right? If you scrap with him, he can trash you and rip you. He can mock you like he mocked that reporter with the arm. He tried at one point. I don't even know who you are. Do I care? I mean, I'm not in middle school anymore. I mean, I'm not a teenager. I'm a grown man. I mean, what do I care? You know who I am or not? He may have, may not. And he didn't know what to do with courtesy and respect that wasn't slavering obeisance to him. He didn't know what to do with just somebody who was being decent to him. And I think that's his kryptonite, actually.
Kill him with kindness, we say back here.
Yeah. I mean, he never once, even after I called him and the world-class hater and Stephen Miller a world-class hater and got fired for it, which you'd think he'd dunk on me. After the interview, he never mentioned me again. Not that sounds like I'm egotistical, but he's out trashing reporters all the time, and I get the feeling like he didn't want anything to do with me again. And
Yeah.
now he's got his wish.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can still make plenty of noise from him. There was one thing he said to you about Biden, and where he accused you of being fake news because you didn't report on Biden's cognitive decline, which it's become clear that it was there. Can you tell us anything about that? Did the media know? And was the media like, oh, we can't talk against Biden because of the opposition? We just can't let Trump in. Was there something like that? I mean, I've heard that Biden was the easiest quote to get for years
Yeah.
in Washington.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's talking to nobody. All of a sudden he's not talking to Congress people. He's not seen. That wasn't really reported, except by Fox News bombastically and exaggerated. But is the media culpable for that?
No question about it. No
Mm.
question about it. And this is one of the big problems with that mainstream legacy media is there's just not enough dissent. Had there been any
Mm.
actual Trump voter in a position of prime, which there should be, you're covering the whole country. You should have people who reflect the interests and values of the country. And I did try. I went on the air once. It was on the Sunday show. And I said, I don't think the American people want to vote for somebody who's 81 years old and it's going to be 86 at the time. And that's a real issue for him. And he's too old. And I've said it a few times, just not to tell too many tales out of school because I don't want to, but I did try behind the scenes as well. I said, our standards were it needed to be diagnosed, was what I was told. And I'm saying, I'm not talking about medicine. I'm talking about our families. We all know. We
Yeah.
all know. We've all been through it. People we love. We know this. My mom had Alzheimer's. I mean, now I don't think he's got Alzheimer's, but just decline. And I was like, it seems to me we should take note of the fact that he can't walk up the stairs right anymore, that he slurs his words, his voice goes down to whispering, that he's clearly confusing one thing. And at the same time, we were making a big deal when Trump confused Pelosi with somebody else, and that was on our news program at the time. And Biden would he like I think he talked about Helmut Kohl. He talked about dead people. What was it? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
He talked about people who were dead,
Yeah.
as if they were. He was the current chancellor of Germany. Crickets from the news media, from the established news media. Yes, that is a colossal error, and it was. I mean, I guess it was because they were afraid it would help Trump. I don't know. I never heard anything about the editorial decision, except these are delicate issues. Fair enough. Diagnoses are absolutely really important. And that's when I was like, every single American looks at them and knows exactly what they're seeing. I was
Absolutely.
I went on a trip with Biden to Japan the previous years. That would have been 2023. And I thought, well, he had a 40-minute press conference on what was discussed over there. And, he always loved foreign policy. So he was okay. He was good. Went up the stairs pretty well at that time. But I remember thinking to myself, he's clearly in decline since the last time I'd seen him, kind of eyeballed him up close, not on TV. His gait, his hands, expression in his face, all that. And I thought that would have been, I think, like April, May of 2023. And I thought he should drive. I said, somebody who loves him is going to say at the Christmas holiday or Thanksgiving holiday in America, honey, let's call it a day, And
Yeah.
instead they did the opposite, it turned out.
Mm.
I said, no,
I
you
think
can.
that I think that's what everybody was expecting, especially when he said he was going to run again. It's like, okay, he can maybe finish out the first term, but you can't let him run again. That's what was really scary. To be honest, it was. Yeah, and I think that done a lot to harm the trust in the media. I
Yeah.
really do. I really do.
Yeah. And
Um,
frankly, there was an attitude about Trump from the get-go. Okay, from the night that Trump. So I was living in London at the time. I was the chief foreign correspondent, but they brought me back in 2016 to cover the election because I'd done a lot of them. and I had a great job. I could go anywhere I want, do any story I want, and sell it to whomever. So I was around for 6 weeks before the election. I got back to the New York City offices of ABC News, and I said, "Yeah, I think he's going to win." And they were like, "No, no way!" And it was like Brexit. I'd covered Brexit, right? So it was you got a certain distance away from a major city, and it was like hitting a wall. You just knew it. You could feel. Now Brexit, I didn't know at all. I was shocked by Brexit, but Trump, you could feel. Also, I thought Hillary was a bad candidate. I couldn't figure out what she was campaigning on, and so I thought, yeah, he's going to win. And the night it happened, I was on TV with the ABC team. We're all sitting around talking about it. Everybody's so depressed, like literally, somebody cried on the air about it. I mean, come on. And so I kind of perked up. I said, look, there's really good news here. He brought a lot of people in who'd given up on democracy. They hadn't voted in a long time or didn't think their votes matter. This is their moment. It works for them. They wanted to take a slap at the establishment, and they did, and it worked for them. That's good, you know?
Mm.
And for the first term, it was the coverage was completely imbalanced. He wasn't that exceptional a president in that first term. He was held back. He didn't really know what he wanted to do. He wasn't that competent. He did a lot of mean tweets, and they used to, lead the news. And I lost stories there because I went back in 2018. They'd send me over to the White House, and they wanted me to do a story on a mean tweet. And I said, we're covering the Trump show. We should cover the Trump presidency. All right. So then he wins, and now it's kind of, I think it's too deferential the other way. In 2024 he wins. I think it's too deferential in the other way because it's like, oh. So I think we got it. Just play it straight.
Yeah, but it shows the media leaning into the power. Now they are leaning into the Trump that kind of power a little bit. It really does show that power really does control the media. I mean, big pharma and companies like that. I mean, they're not talked about half enough in America. The damage that they do is not talked about half enough. And I was actually just watching one of your interviews earlier, and it had the ad still on the YouTube, and it was advertising medicine, pharmaceutical products.
I just set that thing up, so they must think, okay, well, he's news. It'll be old people watching. I don't know.
Not one. It was one of your older interviews with ABC.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's just I don't know that Americans know how strange that is to other people around the world when they see pharmaceuticals being advertised on telly. It's insanity. How can that be allowed?
It is insanity, and there are proposals to ban them. Okay, and they come from both, really progressive people on the Bernie Sanders wing and people on the populist Trump wing, and that power that they have to, talk to your doctor, and they make an enormous, an obscene amount of money. People can't afford the medicines a lot, and they get to kind of get people on them. Maybe they need them, maybe they don't. Maybe if you took a walk a little bit more, you wouldn't be dependent on the medication. Plenty of people need a lot of medicines, but I'm just saying there's other ways.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff is out there, and that is what the next winning coalition is going to be. American politics in jumble. The populist card has been there to pick up for anyone, right? A billionaire's tax, or like Elizabeth Warren had. Get after the big pharmaceuticals. Make housing more affordable. People can't afford to buy homes in the United States. There are issues that would unite these people who are at each other's throats, partly because there are a lot of people making a lot of money making Americans angry at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, I think, a genuine populist. Bernie tapped into it. Trump then tapped into it, even though he's a charlatan when it comes to genuine populist economics. But people feel like it's not going to be that technocratic Obama Clinton era where the rich seem to get richer and my kid can't afford a house or whatever. That is there. That is an avenue that can easily be seized by anyone with the kind of program that you're talking about. The big corporations, the rich getting richer, real genuine opportunity for people to have a better life. This place I'm in right now, this is a 98-year-old cottage in northern Michigan, built by my father-in-law's grandparents back in the 1920s. And it's on a lovely lake up here. And this used to be middle class life in America, right?
Hmm.
It's not winterized. It's not luxury. It's not a second home. It's a proper cottage in the woods. And people used to be able to be on the assembly line in Detroit or whatever and make enough money to have this and put a boat in the water and go fishing when they wanted. All that is gone. All of that is long gone.
Hmm.
And we're a people that are not going to accept decline. And that's the secret to Trump. He said, decline is over with me. We're going to make it great again.
Yeah, yeah. That's to be honest, I think a lot about the environment. I think a lot about climate change. Um, I've written a bit and studied and stuff about that. And what broke my heart and made me roll up my papers and throw them over my shoulder was drill, baby, drill.
Mm.
This whole idea, all that climate change is rubbish. Let's just drill, baby, drill, energy. Let's go back to the good old days, the Gilded Age, when everything was good for 5% of people. Um, and that's very worrying. I remember it was about maybe 8, 10 years ago that I was listening to Noam Chomsky speak, and I thought he was being hyperbolic at the time when he was asked, "What do you think is the biggest threat to organized human life on this planet?" And his answer was the Republican Party. And I thought at the time that's a bit of an exaggeration. I don't think that anymore. I think he might be right. I think he might have been right.
Hmm.
Um, and that's scary. What do you think happens in the next election cycle? Who do you think, or what do you think can beat Trump? Because he's got the
Yeah,
biggest name recognition. I've never thought he's going to hand over power. It's going to be a peaceful transition unless he can get one of his sons in there or something like that. So I do think he's going to try and run again.
I do too.
Um,
He's now disavowing it because the polls are so against it. But I think he's just set it aside and he'll plot how to get around the constitutional prohibition on a third term. He will. And he'll trash the Constitution in
mhm,
order to hold on to power, depending on his health, right? And we're learning more that he has some of the normal ailments of old age. So I did want to say one thing about the climate stuff, though. Biden was a man. I covered him. I first interviewed Joe Biden in 1987, so I knew him a long time. And he was a guy, classic legislator. He was a creature of the Congress, of the United States Senate. And he thought the way to fix Trumpism was to show people that government can make positive change, put people back to work and all that stuff. And so he passed some very big bills that were also future oriented. The CHIPS Act that will apparently improve America's position on that issue, and a huge climate bill that was aimed at transforming the American economy, making the United States a leader in green industries. Trump basically zeroed that out in this budget that they just signed. And the Democrats, the Biden administration couldn't get any of it done. They were supposed to, for example, I own an electric car. They were supposed to seed the country with charging stations. They hadn't built a one. They had not built a one. Okay. And it
mhm.
was a 300 and some $1 billion bill, and they had not built a single charger. The incompetence of government is one of the things that has people frustrated. So, how do you beat Trump? I think Trump will help to beat himself. Like all authoritarians, he wants easy money. He wants cheap money, right? He wants to debauch the currency. He's already talking about firing the chairman of the Federal Reserve. That'll send inflation up and that will demoralize people. Um, but what on the positive side would, I think the Democrat that wins against Trump or Trumpism is the Democrat that rebels against the Democratic Party first and says and angers Democratic leaders, is a danger to the Democratic Party, kind of like Trump was in a positive way, but says, your time is over. You sold us out, right? You got obsessed with cultural issues that don't matter to a lot of people. You missed the boat on economics. The rich got richer. You've essentially turned the Democratic Party into a party of the university class and the professional classes. The Democrats lost working people. For the first time in my lifetime, they lost working people. And I think there's going to have to be somebody like this Mamdani guy in New York who captures. Now that's New York City. It's a hardcore Democratic city, although a lot less so than it used to be because they're seen as the part of the elite. But he's got young, he's got energy, he's got new ideas about leveling the playing field, about giving people opportunities that have been stolen from them, they think. And so they get frustrated and angry and they start blaming the other and falling for Trump's populist, trash. And at the end of the day, I think that's the person. Are there any on the horizon? I don't see any.
Will somebody be let do that? I mean, Bernie was cut down before when he tried to do that?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so I worry about Mandani or somebody else coming up, and there's going to be a big body politic in the Democratic Party that's going to close them down. I feel if they're not playing the game for the rich people. That's what worries me.
That's electoral disaster for them if they're seen as blocking some of these. Look, I think one thing the Democrats could and should completely rally around that would put the Republicans on their back foot. So at the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, there were tycoons, right? John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie and all the robber barons and all the rest of it. And their money couldn't be touched because the Constitution prohibited an income tax. And so the people said, well, we can't have that. I mean, at the time, John D. Rockefeller owned like 4% of the wealth of the world or something like it was insane. And so they passed a constitutional amendment. We need a constitutional amendment now on wealth taxes because, or to explode the tax code because the tax code no longer reaches the wealthiest Americans, not even close, right? So Elizabeth Warren and others say, let's pass a constitutional amendment. She doesn't think it needs one. I do think it needs one, but that's good. That'll get people going, Who doesn't believe that somebody with an income, with a net worth over $50 million could pay a little bit more?
Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Curtis Yarvin, Elon Musk, none of them guys think they should be paying that money. And they've got this, I don't think Trump, he's got some sort of reptilian kind of intelligence, he's a huckster, and he is good at that. But the likes of Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Curtis Yarvin, the people I've mentioned, they do have a philosophy that they're building. And it's an anti-democratic philosophy where they're going to be the tech monarchs that the rest of us have to follow to Mars or wherever the hell they're thinking about going. Do you worry about that, about the tech oligarchs that are there now and the power that they have, and not just the power that they have financially or within the government, but the power that they have to influence the public, influence public decisions?
I worry about that a lot, Di, because these guys, first, they have amassed this power. They basically benefited from the network effect. They were the first in a space to do X, Y, or Z digitally. And since they were the first there, boom, up. I'm sure they made smart business decisions along the way. And you're right; they're all very socially. A lot of their ideas are socially destructive. They don't kind of believe in society; they believe in themselves and all the rest of it. The other reason I worry about them is politics and self-government is about people who know something about each other. Really, you know what I mean? It's a people business. It's knowing the good ones and the bad ones in some ways. They get people. They understand. They have either empathy or the kind of huckster instinct. They're deeply humane, right? It's a people business. These are the biggest nerds at every school they ever went to. These were the guys who bullies might pick on. And while that's very, very wrong, you could see the point with Mark Zuckerberg or Peter Thiel. I mean, you wouldn't do it and you wouldn't approve of it, but these are the people who were the least connected. They're weirdos.
Yeah.
They have weird ideas, and they
Hmm.
have no apparent connection to the notion, the very simple human understanding of a community.
Hmm.
They're all weirdo libertarian, Ayn Rand libertarians that
Yeah.
have no vision for us together.
Well, the vision they have is a techno modernist vision. So I think they do have an organized plan, and it does involve all of us, but it's just a future that none of us want to live in, I don't think, except them. And they've been brought up playing video games and reading sci-fi novels, and this is the future that they see. I don't mind people thinking like that, except when they have huge influence and huge power. That means we're all in danger of ending up in that future. Um, so yeah, I guess I just wanted to highlight those
Yeah.
tech oligarchs because I think it is a really really big worry. Um,
Well,
also,
and you see also, Dahi, that they didn't believe in anything they claimed to believe, right? When it was fashionable for them to be, I don't know, pro LGBTQ, pro diversity policies, pro equalizing or trying to help the poor, they were all they claimed that they were all on board and that this is their mission in life. And like that, they're like, no, we can get a lot more money if we screw everybody else. And now all that stuff is gone. They pretended those were their values and their ideals. And now,
mhm,
zip, just 180 degrees because power went the other way.
yeah,
So I don't know. That describes to me either a weak person or a bad person or both.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. It's a it's a scary time. I wonder, does you might be able to tell me this? Do Americans realize the place they have in the world, the trust that the rest of the world has put in them? I mean, since World War II, and I know American exceptionalism. It's like we protect the world, and we saved everybody in all the wars, which we can go through. You actually didn't, but you helped. But it's a trust that has been given to America. It's not, it's a faith that has been given to America because of the values and the ideals that have at least purported to being what you wanted to give the world. And in a large extent, you have in a lot of places, but in a lot of places you haven't, and you've acted opposite to your ideals. How, but when I see democracy failing or in trouble in America, I mean, okay, it was European ideas that traveled to America and created that, but it was America that uh, cashed it out. That built the democracy, and the rest of the democracies around the world, including our old one, is almost modeled almost on the American system. So when we see that in trouble, we're not just afraid because Trump is like threatening to not go in for Article 5 and he's saying, well, we might not save them. We'll see. But I think we're afraid because if that democracy fails,
Hmm.
then it's very likely to be a domino effect on other democracies around the world. And you're already seeing other democracies acting in similar ways to how the Trump administration is acting.
Yeah,
Um, do Americans realize the trust the world has in them? Do they realize the place they have?
some, but I would say not most because, you know, most Americans, even in this day and age, will never leave the United States. I didn't see another country until I was 22 years old, and that was Ireland. I've seen a lot since then, but that I'd never been out of the country, not even to Canada.
Well,
And I only lived, I didn't live that far from there. So most Americans still to this day don't live now. And that's one of the reasons we're getting this reaction to this large tide of immigrants that have come in the last 10, 20 years. Uh, the vast majority of them peaceful and trying to be contributors to this country, and to see them snatched off the streets by masked gunmen is a heartbreaking thing. They're innocent people as far as the criminal law. They will have come here unlawfully and there may be things to do there. But I think Americans don't understand, in a weird way, the role that the United States plays in keeping those values and that system that tries to, haltingly, failingly sometimes tries to advance them. I don't think they understand. There's tremendous resentment. One thing, if you, over the years, as long as I've known it, pollsters would ask Americans, what percentage of the federal budget goes to foreign aid? And it was before Trump, like two, maybe a tiny, tiny percent. And people would regularly say 20, 30% of the budget. They had no idea that really for a very, very, very small ask, very small price, the United States was able to do good things around the world and to spread the values that we used to profess that we failed to live up to, as everybody does in their own personal lives and as every country always has, but that we wanted to see in the world. I don't think most Americans understood that. Trump addressed a cartoon version of the US and the world. They're ripping us off. They're all losers and ripping us off,
Mm.
and they're commies, and all the kind of lowest common denominator. And I think that's the way he looks at the world,
Yeah.
understanding of the world, and everything's transactional from him. I mean, everything in life for Trump, people and countries are divided into two kinds. There are the ones who are getting screwed and the ones who are doing the screwing.
Mm.
And he knows who he wants to be. He
Mhm.
has no understanding of any kind of actual relationship that can be mutually beneficial, that can advance mutual interests. And I think in that he reflects the isolationist element in America that's always there by its nature, because people I lived like 800 miles or whatever from the nearest border, and it was Canada. A lot of people live thousands of miles from the nearest international border, and they have no idea kind of what the world is like. They only see what they see in Hollywood and on the news, and that will impact them. And so I think it's kind of sad that, and this has been said before, we have borne this very important role, played this very important role in the world, blindly at times, stumbling into Vietnam, and we're going to turn Iraq into Vermont in terms of New Hampshire in terms of democracy there. People had no clue. That people went there didn't have a clue. They were quite earnest, though.
Yeah.
Some of the people who went, some of the people who died, aid workers, had no idea what the nature of that culture was, and
Yeah.
thought, well, we're Americans here. You're
Mm.
going to want this. So for all those failings, that at least was an effort. I think Trump touches something right now. The United States, the people of the United States, I would say a majority of them are like, our life has declined. We don't want to talk about the rest of the world until we get this place straightened out, I think.
Yeah, but they forget we're in such an interdependent global economy and global world now. We've increased our means of transportation so much, our means of shipping goods around the world, our means of transporting money, our means of communication. Me and you are thousands of miles away now, talking instantly to each other. Um, that isolationism is crazy in that environment that ye have made. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
okay. A couple of last questions, Terry, because I'm going to let you go then. But was it 1982 you came to Ireland,
yeah, yeah.
and
Fall of
you
19.
yeah, you stayed in a place that's not far from where I'm sitting right now in Ballyconneely, and back then the picture the world had of America was very different, and any American that landed here was like, oh, great, you know what I mean? You're great, but yeah, the biggest movies around then were like Tootsie and Rocky and Rambo. You know, it was a different picture the world was getting of America, but you said in other interviews that you had been thinking about going to law school, but then you took a year out, you went traveling. Ireland was one of the places in Ballyconneely you stayed for a lot of that time. Was there something about your time in Ballyconneely that was formative, that changed you, that made you think, I actually want to be a journalist? And if so, can you tell us about that?
I've never thought of it that way, but I had it was a hard year. My father died just right as I came. Actually, I turned around and go back. But I spent the year there, and it was really my first. I'd been on the school newspaper and all that stuff, but it was really my first. The west of Ireland at that point, Ballyconneely at that point, 1982. I was there on a fellowship that I'd gotten from the founder of IBM. Set up these fellowships. Go anywhere in the world for college graduates. Do anything you want to do. We'll fund it. They gave me some money. And there's only one condition: you cannot engage in a formal course of study. You can't go to school. So it's got to be someplace, something out in the world. So my proposal was to look at economic development with an emphasis on foreign capital investment in the traditionally rural counties of Western Ireland. Well, I got there in the fall of 1982 to discover there was no economic development. I mean, there was some. There was some. Not much though.
They were putting an extension on the pub. That was it.
And so, well, I learned a lot about that. There was Fieldcrest was in Killala in Mayo, and there were a few other. I think digital was already in Galway. Galway already had kind of pharmaceuticals and digital economy just starting at that point. It's kind of interesting. But I was out in Ballyconneely. That was like going back in time, right? And I got to be good friends with some people out there, dear friends. And what it was, I guess, thinking of your question, it made me more curious about the world. It made me more curious about people not like me. It made me sort of passionately curious because at one and the same time, I could see in some of the Irish fellas that I got to know, like echoes of my own family and my own upbringing, but not too. So the values were different. It was also at a time when Reagan was president. He was not particularly popular with a lot of people in Ireland. And so there was that as well. But mostly it was a way of life out there that was very, very different. People with different ways of looking at the world and values, the challenges they faced. Some of my friends were very poor. In fact,
Absolutely. There was if I go out there now, and I know a lot of people who go out there, they'll ask me a question, and they won't say, "Where are you from?" They'll say, "Who do you belong to?" You know, exactly, like, where's your roots? Do you know who your people? Another way they put it. Were you ever asked that question out there? Do you have roots in the west of Ireland with a name like Moran?
I do. Moran, as they say, right? So yes, my father's family was from County Mayo, and my mother's from also Mayo, Westport. So my mom had her mom was Irish. My dad's all his family were Irish, and my mom's family's from Westport.
I was there yesterday.
Were you? Beautiful
Yeah.
town, at least as I remember it. And I've been back 2 or 3 times since.
It is beautiful.
But I do remember, here's a story. So I was out on Achill Island, I'm pretty sure it was off Mayo, for Easter once. Went to Mass. I was with a German friend. We were hosteling. And there's a little pub right by the lighthouse, was at that time. And sheets of rain coming. Everybody goes in for a pint after the Mass. Door opens. Kind of, it sounds like a movie scene. The wind blows it over. In steps this fella, and the bartender, who, by the way, when I went up to get something to drink, he'd said, "Where are you from?" And I'd said, "Outside of Chicago." He says, "Where?" I said, "Oh, Barrington." He says, "What street?" He had driven a truck for a grocer, went right by my house for a number of years, made some money, bought the pub. Anyway, it was his brother walks in the room. Place goes silent because everybody knows. Hadn't seen him in years. Comes out from behind the bar. They look at each other. Says, "How you doing?" Shake hands. None of this, like, just, you know what I'm talking about. I know. I have 6 brothers. We do that, right? As I said, echoes. And then everybody goes back to, and the guy, the brother that came in, he got his pint. He takes pipes, like what do you call them? Those Irish pipes,
Like a smoking pipe?
Pipes. No, pipe, like bagpipe.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, it would be bagpipes then, yeah.
Yeah, and he starts playing. And that's when I look at the bartender, and he's crying, right? And I remember thinking, well, this is something I've never really experienced, and I think if there was something that Ireland gave me, it gave me a lot. What I said was a hard year. It was that sense that when I came home, I didn't want to go to law school. I wanted to travel the world, have somebody pay me, and I could write about it or do whatever. And actually I got to do that. So I'm very, very lucky.
That's great. That's great. One thing I love about Ireland is that when someone starts singing in a pub, everybody shuts up.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Even if they're bad singers, it doesn't matter. Let them finish the song, even if they're making a hymns of it, you know. But okay, last question, Terry. I ask it to all my guests. If we had a clean slate and we were rewriting what it is to be human on this earth, and you could add one sentence to that new story, what would it be?
To the new story of what it means to be human. So much of what it means to be human is already pretty beautiful, I think. I'm a glass half full guy generally, but let me see. I would say, well, I'll come back to your point. Being human means being in love with the earth and being a good steward of it.
Beautiful. I love that one, Terry. I love that one. Thank you so much for your time, Terry. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. And folks, I'm Di. This has been Terry Moran on Philosopheckery. Bye-bye now. 3, 4.